Harlem in the 1960s was changing fast. The streets were alive with tension and energy. The Vietnam War was tearing the country apart. Black power was rising, and a new kind of gangster was stepping into the spotlight. Politics and crime weren't separate anymore. They were starting to collide. The old era of legends like Bumpy Johnson was fading. In their place came a new generation. Nicky Barnes, Frank Lucas, Frank Matthews, and Guy Fisher. These men saw an opportunity others missed. Soldiers were coming back from Southeast Asia, addicted to heroin, and Harlem became the center of a booming underground economy. What they built wasn't just a drug trade, it was a powerful empire, unlike anything seen before. If you're already locked in, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. You're about to hear a story most people don't break down like this. Lou Sims was born right into this chaos. He was the youngest of 10 kids, growing up in a home where survival came first. His older siblings did whatever it took to put food on the table, and that meant the streets. They worked with seasoned hustlers, made names for themselves, and brought that lifestyle home. Lou didn't have to go looking for trouble. It was already in his living room. By the time he was 12, Lou had his own crew. While most kids were in school worrying about homework, he was learning how to move in the streets. A few years later, he was helping his older brothers run some of the busiest drug corners in Harlem. Then came 1982. Lou was just 17 when he caught his first case and went to prison. When he came home in 1988, Harlem wasn't the same. The organized heroin game was gone. In its place was something far more dangerous. Crack cocaine had taken over, and the streets turned into chaos. There were no real rules anymore. Neighborhoods looked destroyed. Violence was everywhere. Young hustlers like Rich Porter, Alpo Martinez, and Ozzy Fazon were making millions almost overnight. But that money came with a price. Targets were on their backs, and death was always close. At the same time, older figures like Clarence Preacher Heatley weren't playing games. They used fear and extreme violence to stay on top. If you wanted a piece of the pie, you had to take it and hold it by any means necessary. And while all this was happening, a new sound was rising from the streets: hip-hop. Entrepreneurs like Sean Combs and Damon Dash took that raw energy and turned it into something bigger. They brought the street mindset into the business world, building empires of their own. But even in suits and boardrooms, the danger never really disappeared. The crack era became a wild mix of fast money and instant fame. The old rules didn't matter anymore. Everything came down to one truth: power was everything. Lou adapted. He didn't just survive, he thrived. Alongside his partner, Charles "Fat" Leon Brown, he built a major operation. What started on 142nd Street grew into something much bigger, stretching into places like Louisiana, Alabama, and Delaware. They weren't just local players anymore. They were running a full-scale operation. But when that kind of money starts flowing, it doesn't stay unnoticed. The streets weren't the only ones watching. Politicians were paying attention too. And when they see that kind of power, they don't ignore it. They either want a piece or they want to shut it down completely. Lou would learn that the hard way. He found himself caught between the streets and the system, first used by local leaders pushing their own agendas, then targeted at the highest level of government. The pressure came from all sides, and eventually it reached the top. Attorney General Janet Reno and President Bill Clinton signed off on decisions that would change Lou's life forever. They wanted to make an example out of him. This is the story of how Lou Sims faced it all and survived. Nobody talks about how fast power can turn into a prison sentence. One day, you're respected, feared, and moving like a king in your neighborhood. Nelson, the next, you're standing in a courtroom, hearing the words 30 years. That's the story of Lou Sims, the alleged leader of the 142nd Street Lynch Mob, a name that carried weight, fear, and mystery through the streets it controlled. This isn't just a crime story. It's a story about power, loyalty, betrayal, and how the federal system, especially RICO, can take down an entire empire in one move. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button. Before the headlines and courtrooms, Lou Sims was just another name in the neighborhood. But over time, that name started to mean something. People whispered it. Some respected it. Others feared it. 142nd Street wasn't just a location. It became a brand, a territory, a place where control meant everything. Sims didn't rise by accident. In neighborhoods like that, power is earned through strategy, connections, and reputation. And from what people said, he had all three. The lynch mob wasn't just a loose group. It was organized, structured, disciplined. Everyone had a role. Everyone knew the rules. And at the top, according to prosecutors, was Lou Sims. That kind of leadership doesn't come easy. It takes influence. It takes trust. And sometimes it takes fear. Here's where things change. Most people think crime cases are about one person doing one thing. But RICO doesn't work like that. RICO, the Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act, is built to take down entire groups, not just individuals. It's the government's way of saying, we're not just coming for the soldiers, we're coming for the whole operation. And once RICO enters the picture, everything becomes bigger. Phone calls become evidence, conversations become conspiracy. Even knowing the wrong person can pull you into a case. For Lou Sims, RICO was the turning point. Every empire has a weak point, and most of the time, it's not the police, it's people. Loyalty is everything in organizations like the lynch mob. But loyalty doesn't always last, especially when pressure hits. Federal cases don't just rely on surveillance. They rely on people flipping, testifying, telling stories from the inside, and that's where things start to break. Somebody always knows something. Somebody always talks. In the case against Sims, prosecutors built a picture, not just of crimes, but of leadership, control, influence. They didn't just want to prove he was involved. They wanted to prove he was the one calling the shots. That's the real danger of RICO. You don't have to touch everything. If they prove you let it, you own all of it. And when that happens, betrayal cuts deeper than any charge. The government doesn't rush these cases. They watch, they listen, they build. For months, sometimes years, investigators gather evidence, wiretaps, informants, financial records. Every small piece becomes part of a bigger story. And when they finally move, it's not random, it's coordinated. Arrests happen fast. Indictments drop heavy. Suddenly, names that meant power on the street are printed on legal documents. Lou Sims wasn't just charged, he was positioned as the ringleader. That label changes everything, because now it's not about what you did, it's about what you controlled. Here's the part most people don't expect. Cases like this aren't just about crime, they're about narratives. By the time the courtroom phase begins, the story is already built. Prosecutors don't just present facts, they present a full picture of an organization with a leader at the top. And in this case, that leader was Lou Sims. Some people believe the case wasn't just about actions, it was about influence. Being the leader makes you responsible for everything tied to the group, even things you may not have directly touched. That's what makes RICO so powerful and so dangerous. It turns association into liability. It turns leadership into responsibility for everything. In the streets, power is loud. In the courtroom, power is quiet and controlled. There are no crews, no territory, no reputation to hide behind, just evidence, testimony, and decisions. For Sims, the courtroom became the final battlefield. But this wasn't a fight you win with presence, it's one you fight with proof. And when the government comes with years of preparation, it's hard to break that momentum. Witnesses speak, guys cooperate, evidence stacks up. And slowly, the image of a leader becomes solid in the eyes of the jury. 30 years. That number hits different. It's not just time, it's life. It's birthdays missed, family moments gone, entire chapters erased. When the sentence came down, it wasn't just punishment, it was finality. For the system, it was a victory. Another organization dismantled, another leader removed. But for those connected to Sims, it was something else entirely. Because no matter what side you're on, 30 years forces you to stop and think. Fear, respect, and outrage. This story carries a mix of emotions that don't sit easy. There's fear, because it shows how powerful the system is when it decides to move. There's respect, because rising to leadership in any environment takes something most people don't have. And there's outrage because not everyone agrees with how these cases are built or how responsibility is assigned. That's what makes this story real. It's not clean. It's not simple. It lives in the gray areas where power, loyalty, and law collide. If you step back, this isn't just about one man or one case. It's about how quickly things can change. One day, you're in control. Next, you're being controlled. RICO cases send a message. If you build something big enough to get attention, you also make yourself a bigger target. And leadership comes with a cost. Not just the rewards, but the consequences too. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. The same qualities that help someone rise confidence, influence, and control can also lead to their downfall. Because once you're seen as the leader, everything points back to you. Every move, every decision, every action. That's the weight of power, and not everyone survives it. Nobody talks about how these stories really end. Not with the rise, not with the reputation, but with the courtroom, a sentence, and time that doesn't stop. Lou Sims' story is a reminder that power in the streets doesn't translate to power in the system. And once that shift happens, there's no going back. After the sentence is handed down, most people think the story is over. But in reality, that's when a different kind of story begins. Prison isn't just about serving time, it's about surviving time. For someone like Lou Sims, going from a position of influence on the outside to a controlled environment on the inside is a major shift. In the streets, movement is freedom. Decisions are quick. Respect is visible. But behind prison walls, everything slows down. Every move is watched. Every day feels the same. And mentally, that's where the real battle starts. 30 years is long enough to watch the world completely change. Technology evolves, neighborhoods change, people grow older, kids become adults, and in many cases, relationships fade. That's one of the hidden costs people don't talk about. It's not just about losing freedom, it's about losing connection. Family members move on, friends disappear, and the support system that once felt solid can slowly weaken over time. Some stay loyal, but many don't. Life keeps moving, with or without you. The streets move on. Another reality people don't think about is this. The streets don't pause for anyone. The same blocks that once gave someone power will eventually belong to someone else. New names rise, new groups form, and the memory of who used to run things starts to fade. That's the cold truth. Power in the streets is temporary. It might feel permanent in the moment, but time replaces everything. And when someone is gone for decades, their influence doesn't always survive the gap. That's something a lot of people realize too late. Doing time isn't just physical, it's psychological. You have to wake up every day knowing exactly where you are and why you're there. That kind of pressure can either break a person or force them to adapt. Some people use that time to reflect, to read, to learn, to grow mentally and spiritually. Others struggle with regret, anger, or denial. And in cases like this, where leadership and responsibility played a major role, there's always that question in the background. Was it worth it? That question doesn't go away. It gets louder with time. Stories like this hit different when you really understand them. It's easy to get caught up in the image, the power, the respect, the fast life, but very few people show you how it ends. They don't show the courtroom. They don't show the sentence. And they definitely don't show the years that follow. That's why stories like Lou Sims matter. Not to glorify anything, but to show the full picture. Because once you see the ending, the beginning doesn't look the same anymore. At the end of the day, this isn't just about one man or one case. It's about choices. It's about how quickly things can build and how quickly they can fall apart. And it's about understanding that every move has a consequence, whether it shows up today or years later. Some consequences are small. Others change your entire life. 30 years is one of those consequences. If this story made you think, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Do you think RICO laws go too far, or are they necessary to stop organized crime? And if you want more real, unfiltered true crime stories, make sure you stay locked in and watch the video below.